Have you ever noticed President Obama just repeating the same tired, old, worn-out sound bites over and over again? Have you ever heard him say something like common sense gun laws, or common sense gun legislation, or common sense gun control, or common sense measures to reduce gun violence? Have you ever wondered why he does that? Have you ever wondered why he constantly repeats that phrase, common sense gun whatever it is? That's next on Conservative News. Notice how he always uses the phrase common sense as if it's some sort of pre-sale before he says gun control or gun legislation or whatever, to make you think as if people who don't agree with him don't have any common sense. I mean, who in their right mind would disagree with laws that are just common sense, right? But wait a minute. Don't we already have common sense laws?
3 years ago, a bipartisan common sense bill for common sense reform. Common sense reforms like background checks, that's just common sense. Common sense reform, bipartisan common sense bill, common sense legislation. This bipartisan common sense bill, things like background checks and other common sense rules, put some common sense rules in place that to take some basic steps.
Well, there you go. Only stupid, hard-hearted, calloused NRA members would disagree with laws that are common sense, right? When the president says,
so that we know who you are, so that you can't just walk up to a store and buy a semi-automatic weapon?
how could that be common sense to allow that? That doesn't seem right. The trouble is that soundbite right there, that was an absolute lie. You cannot go into any gun store and buy any gun you want, no matter who you are. Every gun store in America, every single one, has to perform a background check on every person that buys a gun. Unless, of course, they have a concealed carry permit, which you have to have an extensive background check done and have taken at least one or more gun safety courses. If you're a domestic abuser, if you're a convicted felon, if you're underage, if you have any number of a whole host of things on your record, guess what? You can't go into a store and buy any gun. That is against the law. If anyone in this country walks into a gun store and buys any gun they want without having a background check done on them, both them and the gun store is guilty of a federal law. Any gun store in the United States that sells guns has to have a federal firearms license. And that requires that you do a background check on everyone that buys a gun from your store. There's no getting around that, period. The president is lying to you here. But guess what? The president can sit in a Tumblr Q&A and sit around and say anything he wants to these social hipsters, and they'll just believe everything the charlatan-in-chief tells them. And they'll just sit there and nod, and they won't even Google it and check it out to find out if it's a lie or not. And here's another lie.
As many as 40% of all gun purchases are conducted without one. That's not safe, it's not smart.
And it's a lie. Really? Are 40% of guns bought without a background check? Is that true? Well, in the description below, I'm going to provide a link that says it's an absolute big fat lie. Can just anyone walk in and buy any gun they want at a gun show? Has Barack Hussein Obama ever even been to a gun show? Does he know how many private sellers there are versus how many dealers there are at a gun show? Does he even have any clue what goes on at a gun show? Does he even know that existing gun laws are exactly the same for somebody that sells at a gun show as they are for a dealer that sells out of a storefront? Does he even know that? So whenever Barack Obama uses the phrase common sense gun laws or common sense gun whatever, or talks about the gun show loophole, you know without a doubt he is lying. And the only question you need to ask yourself is why.
Until that's a view that people feel passionately about and are willing to go after, folks who don't are willing to go after.